Hi guys, well today I thought we need to get out and about, and I've brought you to one of my favourite islands. This island is in the southern reaches of Moreton Bay Marine Park. As you can see, it's actually dominated by mangrove trees. The reason I brought you here today is because I would like to share with you some ideas about how energy is actually brought into this marine ecosystem, and then it actually moves through the ecosystem and is used by organisms here, and then what is the actual fate? What's the final outcome? Where does the energy go from there? So why don't we go and see what sort of organisms we can find here, and let's get this show on the road, as they say. If we're going to talk about energy and how it passes through our ecosystem and is used by the organisms in an ecosystem, of course, where does that energy come from? Well, the energy that we're going to discuss today actually comes from that big ball of burning gas that's up there in the sky that we like to call the sun. So all the organisms that are in this marine environment that use the sun, they tend to contain a pigment called chlorophyll, and it's this chlorophyll which can capture the energy from the sun, and then it can convert it into a chemical energy which the plants, so whether they're mangrove trees, whether they're seagrasses, or indeed whether they're algae and protists, these organisms then use that energy and that chemical energy to make their own food. Okay, and the food that they're making is indeed carbohydrates. Well, there we have it. This is our formula for photosynthesis. So these are how our plants actually capture the energy from the sun and make their own food. So it starts with carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is removed from the environment, whether it's from the water or whether it's from the atmosphere. The plants then utilize water, and they combine these two ingredients by using the energy from the sun and chlorophyll to capture that energy, to convert it into sugar and oxygen. So that is basically the photosynthetic process. In the vast majority of cases, that chlorophyll is usually green. So we have a look at this red mangrove here, this spotted mangrove, and we can see the leaves. What a beautiful vibrant green. So it's this chlorophyll which enables this plant to capture the energy from the sun. The water that these mangrove trees are using, it's actually coming out of the ocean. And as I'm sure that you're probably aware, is that the water in the ocean, because the ocean water has been sitting on sediments and substrates for long periods of time, it's very, very salty. And indeed, that's the water that these plants are sitting in right now. Because these mangrove trees are living organisms, as you're probably aware also, is that living things can't actually be exposed to too much salt unless they're particularly well adapted. For example, you guys, if you were to drink a big glass of icy cold ocean water, how would you feel after that? Your body would make sure that you got rid of it. You'd probably be very, very sick. And through that process of vomiting, you'd actually get rid of all of that salt from your body. Now these trees, they're living organisms too. They need that water to make their food. It's part of their ingredients, but they can't sustain the salt in their bodies for long periods of time. So mangrove trees have adaptations that enable them to actually, number one, excludes the salt water, so to try and prevent the salt from getting into their bodies in the first place. Now the vast majority of these trees also have a certain tolerance to salt, so if salt is in their bodies, they can handle it for a period of time. And then of course the last thing is if salt does get into their body, then how do they get rid of it? So what some of these organisms do is what they'll do is they'll push the salt out into the leaves. Now there's leaves in some cases will merely drop off, or in other cases they'll make sure that through the process of evaporation, as the water leaves the leaves, they'll also be leaving, the salt will actually be removed from the leaves also, just to be placed on the surface of the leaf. And then of course when it rains, that salt is actually washed off of the leaf. So all of these mangrove trees we see are very well adapted to living in salt water. If you scour the high tide mark of this island, as any foreshores around here, on the high tide mark you'll notice lots of dead, decaying matter that's actually been washed up. And amongst all of this vegetated matter, sometimes we find seagrasses. Now, this particular species of seagrass, this is Zoster Capricorn Eye. Now, the reason I know it's Zoster Capricorn Eye is because when we look at it, the very tips of the leaves are very round in nature. You see that? And also, if we look through the leaf, let me turn around so we get some sun on it for you. Can you see that there's actually a little bit of cross-hatching that occurs? So the vascular system, or the, for want of a better word, veins that you've got going through the leaf there, you can actually see that there's sort of cross markings on there as well. We're just scouring along the edge of the water now. I'm just looking for another type, my favourite type of seagrass, and I think we found it. Not a fabulous specimen, but it'll do. I'll just give it a little bit of a rinse in the water. Now, our previous seagrass, remember we were looking at the Zoster Capricorn Eye, it kind of looked like grass, didn't it? It was just a very long, straight blade. Now, not all seagrasses are long, straight blades. Have a look at this one. Okay, so this is a seagrass. Now, it's got a fabulous name. Now, I've told you the Latin name, which is the scientific name of the eelgrass, which is the Zoster Capricorn Eye. But the Latin name of this grass sounds just like a Harry Potter spell. Are you ready? Get your wands ready. Here we go. Lavalla Spiny. How good is that? Now, the last type of photosynthesizing organism that I would like to introduce you guys to, that we find all over this island and all the way through all of the oceans of the world, are of course algae. When we look around the base of this tree, of this mangrove tree, you can see here there's an abundance of algae. So some really bright green filamentous algae, there's some encrusting algae on there as well. Now, these organisms float freely through our oceans, and some of them fall out of the plankton and settle on any hard substrate they may find. And so that's why you find a tremendous amount of green algae hanging onto rocks and wharfs and pylons and even the bottoms of boats. But algae aren't just restricted to living on hard substrate. We can also find them in the sand on these beaches. Let's go and see what we can find. Now, as we scan the beach and we look down at the sediment, can you see those green tinges? If I come in a little bit closer, can you see the green that's held between the particles of sand there? So some of those sand particles are actually coated, look, there's more through here, they're actually coated with algae. Remember at the start of this video, and I was talking to you about we were going to discuss how energy moves through this marine ecosystem that we call a mangrove forest. Well, it started with the sun. So we've looked at mangrove trees that capture the sun's energy to make their food. We've looked at seagrasses that capture the sun's energy to make their food. And now we've had a brief look at algae that again capture the sun's energy and make their food. But all of these organisms that live in our mangrove system, they don't stay here forever. And in some cases, they get eaten. In our next video, I'll be sharing with you some information about the types of animals that would like to eat these plants. And of course, if those animals are eating the plants, then of course there's going to be other animals that are eating those animals. So next time, we'll have a look at about how the energy from the sun passes even further through this mangrove ecosystem. See you next time.